But guys, thank you very much for giving up of your time and being here on a Thursday evening and participating in Heavy Chef. And I welcome the newcomers and as well as the old faithfuls. We've been on quite a journey together, and it certainly has been a wild ride. So I don't want to talk for too long tonight. I wanted to try and convince you guys about this idea of purpose. And we this whole week, the theme, we've been doing a lot of masterclasses at Heavy Chef. Recently, this week, we've been talking to some very senior members at Facebook at Workshop 17 in Waterfront and in Sandton in Johannesburg about how to use social internationally. We've been writing quite a bit about doing business internationally, and tonight we're going to talk about the concept of purpose across borders. And I think the key word there is purpose. So I started my business, Worldwide Creative, in 2003. Back then it was part of a group of businesses that started in the agency world. I think we got very lucky. It was part of a sort of digital gold rush, I guess, where we all kind of started between around about 1998 and 2004. There were some very early runners like Quirk and Cambrian, Presence, Aqua Online, and a bunch of these guys. And I kind of started my agency roughly at the tail end of that kind of, I suppose, digital gold rush. There were a bunch of guys who I think we began the business at just the right time, where everybody was looking into digital as an alternative to the traditional advertising agencies, and they were looking to this new world, and social was really starting to take off, and everyone was really excited. So all of a sudden we were the kind of smartest people in the room, and we were these kind of young digital hotshots, and it was cool. It was really nice because we were, I suppose, part of a very exciting story. And I guess the purpose back then was really just about a land grab. We really wanted to get involved in this new thing that was just, I suppose, really interesting to a lot of people. And we started to chat to a bunch of people at that stage. And I remember a particular story when I spoke to a law firm. And I won't mention who they are, but the guy who ran the law firm was a very well-known lawyer. He's one of the most famous lawyers in the country. And he was asking, about all this digital stuff that we were doing and whether it was relevant to his business and what he was actually up to. And I said to him, you know what, I'd really like to know. And we had our team and his team, and there was this beautiful oak boardroom table. We were on top of a very fancy building at the foreshore, and clearly this was not a cheap place, and he was making quite a fair amount of money out of this agency and this law firm. And I asked him, why are you in business? What is actually the purpose of your business? And he looked at me really strangely and kind of looked at his fellow lawyers and he said, well, it's quite simple, really. We just want to make a lot of money. And I kind of remember that moment looking at this dude and thinking, jeepers, that's quite cold and calculating, but damn, he's very successful at what he's doing. He really is making a lot of money, clearly. So it kind of stuck with me, this whole thing, that his cause was a very kind of practical thing. And I think a lot of businesses around that time had that similar kind of goal or intent. And so as a young agency, we didn't have a lot of clients, we didn't have a lot of work on our books, we didn't have a strong portfolio, and it was my job to go out and get the work. So I went and spoke to a bunch of people, tried to sell what we did, and across the road from where we had rented a small studio was the Ferrari garage. Does anyone remember that? The Viglietti garage in Ruland Street. And I literally walked in there and I chatted to a guy called Reinhardt, who was their brand manager. And I said to him, look, we've got this little agency across the road. I'd love to pitch you our services and tell you a little bit about what we do. And he said, cool, you've got 20 minutes, go for it. So I started to tell him what I did, what we did, the kind of service. I said, look, Ferrari, it's about 2005, doesn't really have a community online. You're not doing a heck of a lot. Everything is kind of, offline. And you've got such an iconic brand. You can do all this cool stuff, and social media is coming about, and you should embrace this. And your website is cuck. So, for Ferrari, come on, you need a bit of shine and glitz and glamour and whatnot, And he was poker faced. The entire pitch that I gave him, this whole kind of spiel about what we could do for them. And right at the end of it, he said to me, what, Fred, thank you for your pitch, but I never trust a skinny chef. And it was the first time that I'd ever heard this saying. I'd never heard what. And I looked at him, I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, you know what, you've told me all the stuff that you do, and I've gone online, I've had a look at your stuff, you say you're doing social media, you're saying you've got a beautiful website, or you need a beautiful website, and you're not doing any of this stuff yourself, so why should I trust you? And so it was such a seminal moment for me. I kind of stopped in my tracks. I went back to my business partner, Mike. We started chatting. He was actually in the UK at the time. And we started talking about this idea of being a heavy chef. It just kind of naturally and organically came into our conversation. Like, how do we become heavy chefs? And so we started almost organically using the term in our internal meetings, and we very quickly adopted some of the tools. We took on the challenge. We started a blog. It was called Ideate. Some of you may remember it. It was way back in the early days of blogging. We combined with a guy called Andrew and a guy called Shane, who started another company called Yappy Chef at that stage. We started this little event kind of get together thing internally. We invited a friend of ours, a lady called Verity. We got together with another guy who ran an advertising agency, Alistair King, and a few other people. We came up with this crowdfunding campaign for Verity, and we started really deploying these tools that were available to us. And this was roughly about 2006, 2007. We started very quickly to rapidly use the tools at our disposal that we were trying to sell to people. I went back to the Ferrari guy, Reinhardt, and I showed him what we had done, and he very promptly said, fine, you're hired. And we won the Ferrari account, which actually wasn't a very big account, but it just looked big. And anyone who's ever run an agency or any kind of services company will know that you're only as good as your portfolio, right? So all of a sudden everyone's like, hey, you got the Ferrari, like maybe you're good enough for us. So we started winning small accounts, and it started to accelerate. And around about 2009, we won the DA account, Democratic Alliance, around about the time of the elections. And we really kind of cut our teeth on that campaign. We essentially ripped off Barack Obama's entire strategy, and which worked for him. So and we paraded around with Helen Ziller and all her crew, and it was great for us. We on the back of that won R&B, we won F&B, we won TFG, all the TLAs, the three-letter acronyms, which are important for any agency, and all amongst these new client wins that we started to grow this agency, we kind of grew into one of the top 10 digital agencies in the country, and started doing a lot of campaign work, a lot of agency kind of staple work, which was very good for us. in amongst all of this, we started to see the growth of this tiny little side project, which we called Heavy Chef, and it was part of this overflow of, what we were talking about internally, and we were challenging ourselves. How can we become more Heavy Chef about these things? And it became our rallying cry internally in amongst this growing team of developers, of strategists, of creatives, of client service people within our agency, and we all kind of rallied around this concept, which became our cause. We were talking about, how to be authentic in a world that suddenly, you're subjected to trillions of signals every single month, whereby everybody's suddenly gone from becoming a consumer to being a publisher, to having a voice and speaking their mind and adding to the conversation. And a lot of fluff and a lot of anxiety around these things. And I think what we started to realize was Heavy Chef was the thing that bound us together and really kind of, I suppose, created our own little, our own purpose. And we wanted to educate people. That was at the core of it, was this thing of learning. And for us to learn, for us to eat our own food, so to speak, and it grew. And I know I've seen a few familiar faces here. Back in those days, we suddenly started getting bigger and bigger speakers to those little events. We started getting people like Michael Jordan, Alan Knott Craig, and so on, coming in, attending and participating and speaking at our events. And all of a sudden, we were getting 300, 400 people at some of the events that we were hosting. And it became a really important part of what we did. Even though it was organic, it was something that grew very naturally out of what we were talking about, what we were doing, and it was very authentic to us. And as a natural overflow of what we spoke about at a Heavy Chef and what we were doing in terms of educating people, we started to gather and gain more clients, and it became a legitimate sales funnel for us, even though that was unintentional. It was not what we wanted in the beginning. It was not what we envisaged. It became such an amazing magnet for people to come to us because it was it was non-threatening. We could invite, these business leaders and so on, not to, come and attend a pitch from our agency, but just to come and attend, something that we had arranged, and it was adding genuine value. So, as it grew, we got to a point in 2013 at our peak, and we started to realize that this was actually starting to gain attraction and attention internationally, and the work that we were doing was very naturally kind of, as anyone who's sort of been on a roll in a business sense, we started gaining attention from international clients, and we won a few international accounts like Vodafone, and we started working with people like Mixed Telematics, listed companies internationally. And it was a real eye-opener for me, being an entrepreneur and a creative at heart. I suppose what I realized was, and what I want to try and convince you, was that this thing of purpose and having purpose transcended any kind of barriers or borders, and started to transgress into an international sphere. And we started really kind of reaching out to people. We were working in Ghana, we were working across about 12 or 13 countries in Africa, in Asia, in Europe, in North America, and producing our service, having very natural conversations about the work that we were doing back in South Africa, adding value. Around about 2013, for those of you who do know the story, we sold, Mike and I, my business partners, sold our agency to a listed company, and I served as CEO for a further 3 years. I will say this on record, that I kind of lost my heart for the business in that space of time. Anyone who's ever sold a business and who's been an entrepreneur and kind of given up their baby for adoption, it kind of has that bit of effect on a lot of people, and it certainly did for me. So I got to the point where I lost that central heart for the business, the cause, the purpose, the thing that really kind of got me to want to do the work. And so 2016, I resigned as CEO. The board gave me their full permission. My business partners were, they gave me their blessing, and I went on a little bit of a sabbatical. And I realized that the thing that actually drove me this entire time, throughout my entire journey in business, was actually not the creative work or the digital stuff, the stuff that was, I suppose, interesting for many people, was actually Heavy Chef. It was about what made me happy. And so after a little bit of reflection, and after having created a somewhat international business, I don't want to overplay it because we weren't, massively successful, but we did good. We did, really well to do the work that we did, and I was very proud of the work that we did. I got to the point where I realized the thing that drove me was Heavy Chef. The thing that actually made me most excited, and the thing that I was good at, was the thing that we started way back out of a conversation with a cocky marketing guy at Ferrari, and that was this thing of learning, this thing of this authentic conversation that happens. And so I realized as well that the offshoot of that was all these amazing entrepreneurs that I connected with in the community. People like John Smith, who's sitting at the back there, who's the founder of PayFast, who I believe was coming to the very first Heavy Chefs way back in 2007, and people such as Andrew and Shane from Yappy Chef, who were attending all those earlier events, who now have created such amazingly inspirational and empowering companies. That was the thing that drove me personally, and it was the thing that drove the people that I was closest to as well, and some of the people that I was really working with and having very natural conversations with. So in 2017, I decided to register Heavy Chef as a company. So I took this little side project. I took the heart of what we were trying to do, which was essentially learning, and decided to look at the thing that really drove me, which was entrepreneurship, and apply this concept and create this learning platform. And I think I just want to end off with a few points, because I want to talk through the journey that's happened since 2017 and the lessons that I've learned subsequently. Is that once I applied this idea of following your purpose, and it's sometimes I want to also try and distinguish something, and we can potentially talk about it in the Q&A, that it's not necessarily the thing that you love, because I don't love the work that I do on a day-to-day basis. There's a lot of admin involved. There's a lot of kind of stuff that's really kind of mind-numbingly boring. I do love the connecting part of it, but it's what I'm good at. And it's, I think, what I've been called to do. And so, thank you. That's a first, by the way. That was almost a slow clap. If it was a slow clap, that would have been awesome. So I think the thing that comes to mind is I read during that time, that transition time, which was really actually quite hard for me to transition from a time of running an agency to and having quite a friggin' stable job and well paid, to kind of not having a salary. And having I don't have a full-on runway, but really kind of taking betting the farm, so to speak, on this thing called Heavy Chef. I read a book by a guy called Dr. James Hollis, who's one of the foremost Jungian psychologists in the world today. And he wrote a book called The Middle Passage, and he talks about meaning and purpose a lot in this book. And he speaks about a story that Jung, quite meta experience. He had a dream about having a dream, where in the dream he woke up from a dream, and he woke up in this on this boat in the middle of the ocean, and it was a dark black ocean, and he suddenly realized that he was alone on this boat, and he was confronted with a choice, because whilst he was dreaming within the dreaming, it's a little bit like Inception, he had lived his entire life with all these strategies and tactics that had kind of worked, but they felt like a little bit like you stretched across toast, a little bit too thinly, a little bit too pulled apart and whatnot, and you're not really living your best life. And all of a sudden you realize the truth of it is that he's on this boat, and he's actually he's alone, and he is faced with a choice. He can either take the wheel of this boat and starts steering it, even though he doesn't really know where he is, but he's suddenly aware of the truth of where he is. And he can either do that, or he can go back to sleep and go back to those old tactics. And I want to encourage everybody tonight to take the wheel, because it is truly worth it. And subsequently to starting Heavy Chef, it's been the most fruitful and empowering journey for me. It hasn't been flippin' easy. If anyone's been watching, we've had a major international act cancel her tour last year, Imogen Heap. I don't know if anyone knows who she is, but she's a pretty major deal in terms of blockchain technology and music and so on. And we paid a lot of money. We lost a lot of money last month. It's been tough. Anyone who's been on an entrepreneurial journey will know that it's tough. But it's also been really, really exciting, stimulating, rewarding. We're doing all this amazing work now. We're teaching entrepreneurs how to change the world in South Africa. And we're doing work in Art and Khayelitsha. We're doing work in Cape Town. We're doing work in Johannesburg. We're doing some amazing work across the country. And as a result of this, and going back to the point of this thing that transcends borders and being international, is that we've now suddenly from being in business for 2 years, we're getting interest from Nigeria, from Saudi Arabia, from Europe. We're going to start running events in London. This little idea of an education platform, turning learning into a lifestyle for entrepreneurs, is now transcending all kinds of boundaries, and it has meaning and purpose. And hopefully we're going to make a difference in this country to the entrepreneur sector. So again, I want to encourage you, just take the wheel. Thank you.